What if Carl Sagan didn't just warn us about religion, but about something even more dangerous that would replace it? He foresaw a future where humanity wouldn't worship gods in churches, but algorithms in glowing screens. Where belief wouldn't come from holy books, but from data we don't understand. Where faith would evolve into something far more seductive. Sagan called it the new demon, technology without wisdom. And he warned that if humanity didn't learn the difference between understanding and dependence, we'd create a god more terrifying than any religion ever imagined. When he wrote The Demon-Haunted World in 1995, he wasn't just writing about the dangers of superstition. He was diagnosing the psychology of a species that prefers comfort over truth and predicting exactly how that weakness would be exploited. He warned that once we abandoned critical thinking, we'd beg to be ruled by those who promised certainty. Whether it came from a pulpit or a screen wouldn't matter. And now, nearly 3 decades later, his words read less like science and more like prophecy. We've traded churches for social media, priests for influencers, and prayer for algorithms that decide what we see, believe, and desire. Sagan's greatest fear wasn't that we'd stay religious. It was that we'd build new religions founded on the same psychological instincts: blind faith, tribalism, and obedience to unseen powers. And the chilling truth is, we already have the forgotten warning. When Carl Sagan wrote The Demon-Haunted World, he wasn't just fighting superstition, he was predicting its mutation. He understood that myths don't die, they evolve. And he feared that when traditional religion finally began to fade, it wouldn't vanish. It would simply change shape. Faith, he warned, could just as easily attach itself to something new, something modern, seductive, and dressed in the language of science. Sagan saw what most people didn't: that humans don't need gods to build religions. All we need is a source of authority that promises meaning, certainty, and control. It doesn't matter whether that authority is divine or digital. What matters is that it gives us something to believe in and someone to obey. That's why, decades before social media, Sagan predicted a civilization that would mistake information for knowledge, drowning in data but starving for wisdom. He worried that once the world became too complex for ordinary people to understand, we'd start treating technology the same way ancient people treated lightning: mysterious, powerful, and sacred. We'd stop questioning how it worked and start trusting whoever claimed to control it. In Sagan's mind, this was the true danger of a scientifically illiterate society, not just ignorance, but the blind reverence that follows ignorance. He knew the future wouldn't be ruled by priests in temples. It would be ruled by engineers in boardrooms, tech prophets promising salvation through innovation. He called this the next great illusion, a society that worships the tools of reason while forgetting the reason behind the tools. And in that illusion, he saw the seeds of a new dark age, not born from religion itself, but from its ghost, reanimated in glowing screens and digital gods. What terrified him wasn't that we'd lose faith. It was that we'd never learn to live without it: the digital priesthood. Carl Sagan believed every era creates its own priesthood. In ours, they don't wear robes, they wear hoodies. They don't stand behind altars, they stand on stages at tech conferences, preaching salvation through progress. Their miracles are called innovation, and their commandments are written in code. But the sermons haven't really changed. They promise transcendence, they demand faith. And behind every gleaming gadget lies the same ancient theology: trust the unseen powers, don't question how they work, and never stop believing that the next update will save you. Sagan would have recognized this dynamic instantly. He understood that technology, when worshipped instead of understood, becomes a new form of mysticism. The language may sound scientific, but the psychology is pure religion, rituals of belief, icons of power, and prophets who claim to know the truth hidden behind the screen. We call them CEOs, futurists, and visionaries. But they function exactly like high priests, interpreting mysteries the rest of us are told we're too small to comprehend. This is what Sagan feared most: not technology itself, but its transformation into a belief system. He warned that the more dependent we become on systems we don't understand, the easier it becomes for those who control them to act like gods. And once that happens, the line between science and superstition disappears completely. Because when you stop asking questions, anything can become sacred. The brand becomes the new scripture. The algorithm becomes divine will. and the engineers behind it become the new gatekeepers of truth. Sagan saw this coming long before Silicon Valley existed. He knew that once we replaced understanding with worship, progress would no longer be liberation, it would be obedience disguised as enlightenment. And that, he warned, is how every civilization begins to lose its soul: the death of understanding. Carl Sagan feared a time when humanity would depend on technologies it could no longer explain. That time isn't coming, it's here. Every day, billions of people rely on systems that might as well be magic to them. Smartphones, satellites, artificial intelligence, miracles of engineering we use, but rarely understand. We tap, swipe, and speak commands into invisible networks, expecting instant answers, as if the universe itself is responding. Sagan warned that this blind dependence would create the same psychological structure as religion: devotion without comprehension, faith without evidence. He called it the death of understanding. Because the moment a society stops grasping how its world works, it becomes vulnerable to anyone who claims to have the answers. And when that happens, power shifts, from the curious to the compliant, from the thinkers to the believers. Whoever controls the code becomes the new high priest. Sagan understood this wasn't just a technological issue, it was psychological. When people lose the ability to distinguish between how something works and that it works, they stop asking questions altogether. The phone works, the GPS works, the AI works, and that's enough. The mystery becomes comforting, and comfort is the death of curiosity. He warned that our civilization could collapse not through war or famine, but through collective ignorance disguised as progress. Because once knowledge feels unnecessary, reason itself begins to decay. The rituals of science, testing, questioning, verifying, get replaced by the rituals of convenience: clicking, scrolling, consuming. In ancient times, people built temples to honor gods they didn't understand. Today, we build data centers for machines we can't explain. The difference, Sagan said, is only cosmetic. The psychology is identical. We've traded incense for electricity, prayer for Wi-Fi, and faith in deities for faith in devices. And just like before, we've mistaken obedience for understanding. Superstition reborn as science. Carl Sagan warned that pseudoscience wouldn't disappear, it would evolve. He saw that in a world obsessed with progress, superstition would learn to speak the language of science, and today, it's everywhere. Astrology is sold as wellness. Manifestation is marketed as quantum mindset. AI gurus sell enlightenment through algorithms. Every ancient delusion has been rebranded for the digital age. It's not faith in gods anymore. It's faith in systems that promise control over the chaos of life. Sagan understood why this new form of belief would spread so easily. Real science is slow, uncertain, and humbling. It demands patience and admits when it's wrong. Pseudoscience, on the other hand, is fast, confident, and flattering. It tells you what you want to hear: that your thoughts shape reality, that your destiny is written in data, that the universe is listening to your vibrations. It feels empowering, but it's built on the same emotional architecture as religion. Comfort over truth, certainty over curiosity. He called this the most seductive illusion of all, the illusion of reason. It looks scientific, sounds rational, even borrows the language of evidence and data. But behind the aesthetic of logic lies the same old superstition, dressed in modern clothes. Sagan saw that this false rationality would be far more dangerous than traditional faith, because it hides inside the very institutions meant to protect truth. When people can no longer tell the difference between science and the simulation of science, the result isn't enlightenment, it's intellectual theater. And that, Sagan said, is how civilizations collapse from within, not by rejecting reason, but by faking it. Today, we don't burn witches, we brand them. We don't consult oracles, we open apps. We don't worship idols, we trust data. And yet, the psychology hasn't changed at all. We've simply learned to call our superstitions science, the god of the algorithm. Imagine a god that never sleeps, one that listens to every word you say, tracks every move you make, and knows everything you've ever searched, feared, or desired. That's not mythology anymore. That's the algorithm. We built it, we feed it, and now we obey it. It doesn't demand prayers or sacrifices, just your attention. But attention, Sagan warned, is the new form of worship. When Sagan spoke about the dangers of centralized knowledge, he couldn't have imagined how literal his warning would become. He said that once information becomes concentrated in too few hands, truth itself becomes negotiable. We created the internet to democratize knowledge and ended up building an oracle no one truly understands. The algorithm has become our modern god, invisible, omniscient, and unquestionable. It doesn't judge souls, it judges data. And based on that judgment, it decides what you see, think, and ultimately believe. Sagan would have recognized this immediately. He knew that the real danger of ignorance wasn't stupidity, it was manipulation. A population that no longer understands how its systems work becomes easy to control. You don't need censorship when you can algorithmically curate belief. You don't need dogma when you can rewrite reality one recommendation at a time. The tragedy, he'd say, is that we still believe we're free. We think we're choosing what to watch, read, or think about. But in truth, most of us are being gently guided, nudged toward outrage, consumption, and conformity. The algorithm doesn't care about truth or wisdom, it only cares about engagement. And that's how the new religion sustains itself, not through fear of hell, but through fear of missing out, not through sermons, but through feeds. Not through divine commandments, but through code, quietly shaping a civilization that no longer needs gods, because it already has one. The return of tribal faith. Carl Sagan predicted that the internet would connect humanity, but he also saw its shadow. He understood that every tool we build reflects the mind that builds it, and our minds are still tribal, emotional, and afraid. Technology didn't erase those instincts, it amplified them. The internet didn't unite us, it sorted us. Every algorithm became a mirror that showed us what we wanted to see, and then quietly turned that reflection into a prison. Sagan warned that when emotion begins to outweigh evidence, civilization slides backward. And that's exactly what happened. The promise of global connection has turned into a battlefield of identities, each one convinced it holds the only truth. Rational discourse has been replaced by emotional loyalty. Facts don't matter, teams do. Every online community becomes its own digital church, complete with dogma, heretics, and rituals of outrage. He would have recognized the psychology instantly. The human brain, Sagan said, is wired to belong. It craves belonging more than truth. And the internet, powered by algorithms designed to reward emotion, has weaponized that craving. Outrage spreads faster than evidence, anger travels further than logic, and moral certainty feels better than admitting you might be wrong. This, Sagan feared, was the ultimate regression, a return to tribal faith, only now global and instantaneous. Where reasoned debate becomes blasphemy, where doubt is seen as betrayal, and where digital mobs replace medieval ones. The new faith isn't in gods, it's an outrage. It gives us the same intoxicating rush religion once did, a sense of purpose, righteousness, and belonging. But just like ancient zealotry, it divides humanity into believers and unbelievers, saints and sinners, us and them. And Sagan's warning still echoes. A civilization driven by emotion instead of evidence can't survive its own intelligence. Prophets of profit. Carl Sagan saw how easily truth could be sold. He warned that when a society loses its ability to ask skeptical questions, it becomes up for grabs for the next charlatan. And that's exactly what happened. The modern world didn't eliminate superstition, it monetized it. Today, influencers preach certainty, not truth. Conspiracy theorists sell community disguised as revelation. Corporations promise meaning and mindfulness, carefully packaged for profit. It's not education, it's entertainment that feels like enlightenment. Sagan predicted that once belief became a commodity, the truth would become irrelevant. Because questioning doesn't sell, certainty does. He called this transformation the industrialization of ignorance. An entire economy now thrives on keeping people angry, addicted, and uninformed. The new prophets don't stand on street corners, they live in your feed. They don't ask for donations, they sell products. And they don't promise heaven anymore, they promise engagement. Every click, every share, every emotional reaction is another tithe to the digital gods of attention. Sagan understood the psychology perfectly. People don't follow charlatans because they're stupid, They follow them because the charlatans tell better stories. Stories that feel empowering. Stories that explain the chaos. Stories that make people feel like they finally see the truth. Everyone else is too blind to notice. The illusion of insight is far more addictive than knowledge itself. The result is a marketplace of manufactured meaning, where emotional validation replaces evidence and moral outrage becomes currency. Every algorithm rewards extremity, every platform amplifies certainty, and every manipulator knows exactly how to weaponize human insecurity for clicks and profit. Sagan feared that in such a world, truth would no longer die in darkness. It would drown in noise. And now, that noise is everywhere, echoing endlessly through glowing screens. The Age of Enlightenment didn't end. It was simply rebranded. Science as heresy. Carl Sagan knew there would come a moment when reason itself would be treated as rebellion again. We're there. Scientists are mocked as elitists. Teachers are accused of corruption. Facts are debated like opinions. The same psychology that once burned heretics at the stake now cancels experts online. Truth hasn't disappeared. It's been reclassified as arrogance. Sagan warned that this reversal would happen slowly, almost invisibly. A culture that grows uncomfortable with uncertainty will eventually grow hostile to those who expose it. Experts don't just challenge ignorance, they threaten identity. And in a world built on tribal belonging, that's unforgivable. Questioning belief systems, even with evidence, feels like a personal attack. So, instead of addressing arguments, people attack the messenger. The scientist becomes the enemy. The skeptic becomes the heretic. He called this the psychological recoil of ignorance. When knowledge feels like persecution, Sagan understood that every civilization that values faith over evidence eventually reaches this point, the moment when truth itself becomes dangerous. Because evidence doesn't care who it offends, and reason has no loyalty to any tribe. That's what makes it powerful, and that's what makes it threatening. He also warned that the attack on reason wouldn't come from the ignorant alone. It would be orchestrated by those who profit from ignorance. Politicians, corporations, and religious leaders all have something to gain from a public that confuses feeling with fact. And they've mastered the oldest tactic in history: convince people that doubt is treason and ignorance is freedom. Sagan's nightmare wasn't that humanity would stop believing in God. It was that we'd stop believing in anything true. A world where every fact is optional, every expert suspect, and every truth negotiable. He saw that civilization can't survive when it begins to treat knowledge as sin. And now, we're living in that prophecy. The silent collapse. The real apocalypse, Carl Sagan said, wouldn't come with fire or flood. It would come with confusion. Not the destruction of cities, but the erosion of understanding. He warned that civilization would one day drown in information and starve for meaning. And decades later, that prediction has come true with surgical precision. We live in an age of constant noise, infinite feeds, endless updates, limitless access to data, and yet less clarity than ever before. Sagan foresaw this paradox, that humanity would create machines capable of storing all the world's knowledge, only to lose the ability to recognize truth inside it. He called it a collapse of distinction, when facts and fiction would merge into a single, chaotic stream. He knew it wouldn't happen dramatically. There wouldn't be a single moment of realization, no headline saying the Enlightenment has ended. Instead, the decay would happen quietly, one unverified post, one viral lie, one algorithmic distortion at a time. Truth wouldn't be outlawed, it would just be outcompeted. And by the time we noticed, it would already be too late. Sagan feared that when people can no longer tell what's real, they stop caring altogether. Confusion becomes normal, cynicism becomes a shield. Nothing is true starts to sound like wisdom, when it's actually the death of wisdom itself. He understood that societies don't collapse when they run out of answers. They collapse when they stop asking questions. And that's exactly where we are now. A civilization hypnotized by its own reflection. We mistake data for knowledge, visibility for truth, and connectivity for understanding. We scroll through an infinite universe of information, never realizing that the light from every star we see might already be dead. The collapse isn't coming, it's already begun, and it's happening quietly, one click at a time. The last choice. Carl Sagan never wanted humanity to worship science. He wanted us to understand it. To him, science wasn't a set of answers. It was a way of staying awake in a universe that prefers dreamers. He believed that understanding is freedom, and faith without understanding is just another kind of slavery. His final message wasn't simply a warning about superstition. It was a prophecy about dependence, our growing willingness to trade awareness for convenience, thought for automation, curiosity for comfort. He feared that one day we'd stop questioning not because we'd found the truth, but because the machines around us made questioning feel unnecessary. That's when the real extinction would begin, not of the species, but of the mind. Sagan believed curiosity was humanity's greatest survival instinct. The ability to ask, why is what separated us from every other animal that looked up at the night sky? But now, that instinct is fading. We no longer explore, we consume. We don't seek truth, we scroll through versions of it. And every new technological upgrade makes it easier to live without understanding the world that sustains us. He warned that civilization's future would hinge on a single question: whether we'd continue to build tools that make life easier or tools that make thought obsolete. The difference, he said, would decide everything. Because progress without reflection isn't progress. It's sleepwalking toward extinction. The choice, Sagan said, is the same as it's always been. Evidence or faith, truth or comfort, understanding or oblivion. He believed that humanity's greatest danger wasn't ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. And unless we reclaim our curiosity, that illusion will finish what superstition began. Sagan didn't ask us to believe in him. He asked us to think, for ourselves, for our future, for the fragile spark of intelligence that might be the only thing standing between us and the dark. Carl Sagan warned that the demons of ignorance never truly die, they just change their shape. And if we're not careful, we'll mistake our own creations for gods and call that progress. His greatest fear wasn't that we'd destroy ourselves, it was that we'd stop noticing when we do. But Sagan also believed in our potential for wonder. He knew that curiosity is contagious, that one honest question can ignite an entire civilization. The antidote to superstition isn't rebellion, it's understanding. So before you click away, ask yourself the question Sagan spent his life asking: do you really understand the world you depend on? If this opened your eyes, or reminded you why critical thinking still matters, don't let it end here. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep thinking for yourself. Because as Sagan said, we are the custodians of life's meaning. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes curiosity can save us. It might be the most important act of rebellion left.